Hello, everyone. Just wanted to say a couple words. Thank you to AppsFlyer for hosting. Very gracious hosts. Also, special thanks to all of our partners in the room tonight. Fivetran in particular, who will be up first to give a quick talk, but also Vision BI is here, Twingo's here. It's really reassuring to see sort of a culture that believes in what we believe in Tel Aviv. Each one of these events that we do gets a little bit bigger, which is awesome to see. So I will be presenting a little bit about Looker, but up first is going to be Peter from Fivetran to explain how to fit it into the ecosystem. Peter.
Thank you. So yeah, I'm not really going to go into Fivetran too much in this presentation. What I want to focus on is just two customer stories of companies of ours that have swapped to be data-driven in 2019. So the two companies are Ignition Group and OutSystems. And I'll go into them a bit more as we go on. Hopefully this works now. Okay, so my name's Peter. I'm an account executive for Fivetran. We're a data pipeline as a service founded in San Francisco. I'm based in our Dublin office, which opened up basically this time last year. We just moved into EMEA. We now have about 88 customers in the region, 600 customers worldwide. We were founded in 2013 in the Y Combinator, and we've since grown to be about 600 plus customers, and we had 320% growth last year alone. We're now at about 115 employees. I think 12 of them are now in EMEA. The rest are in our offices in the US and India. So what I'm going to go into is what to mean to be data-driven. So Forbes have found that in 2018 alone, there was more data created than all of history combined. And that's probably going to happen now in the next 6 months of 2019. This number will be passed again. And what they found is if there's a 10% increase in data accessibility, for a Fortune 1000 company, it can return an additional 60 million in net revenue. And the key words that I want to go into here is data accessibility. And that's exactly what the modern data stack is aimed to do. It's to empower all the business users in your organization and make data accessible to absolutely everyone without the need of having to go through IT to find out an answer. So McKinsey & Company, who's another analysis company, found that data-driven organizations are 23 times more likely to acquire new customers, they're 6 times more likely to retain customers, and 19 times more likely to be profitable. So it is becoming a huge, I suppose, emphasis in most organizations to be data-driven. So the case studies I'm going to go into, the first one is Ignition Group. This is a South African company that came to me last August. Basically, Russell Satters, the CTO, they had a lot of problems. They had no idea why customers were churning. They had no way of predicting what activities customers are doing that's making them likely to churn. They had no QA analysis, and they had no idea how their digital marketing was doing. So across the different, I suppose, advertisements, they were using Facebook, Bing, Snapchat, all of these. They had no idea where it was giving the best ROI, what keywords were doing best, and it just wasn't a data-driven organization at all. Second one is OutSystems. This is a unicorn based out of Portugal. Basically, Pedro's whole job was to come in and make it that every single person in the organization could have a metric that would be able to tell if they're being successful or not. So initially, they had about 15 metrics across the company that all decisions were made on. And now they've upped that to 60 metrics, and they're continuing to grow. So absolutely everything needs to be able to be measured in order to tell if something's a success or not. And to date, they've had 422 million in funding. They're now a unicorn in Portugal. So what is the modern data stack? Traditionally, in the 1980s, when all of this data analysis started to become a thing, it was all IT driven. So you need to have data engineers who would have to orchestrate pipelines. If anyone in the organization, a C-level executive, wanted an answer to a query, he had to get on to an IT person who had to extract that data, he had to do some analysis on it, and come back with an answer. Going into 2000s, this was still basically the case. There was a bit more room for analysts to do some visualization work, but it was mainly all through IT. If someone wanted an answer to a question, it had to go through IT. And in 2010, it's kind of been a bit of a split. So business users still depend on IT for the ETL side of things, for managing the data warehouse, but they could then use Looker to do the analysis for the analysts. So what was the problem with ETL and why did the modern data stack come about? So essentially, if I'm a C-level executive and I have this question that I want answered, I get onto the data engineer, and he or she would have had to know exactly what pieces of data are needed to be taken from your different applications, your databases, your storage facilities such as S3 or Google Cloud Functions, all of the place where you have data. They needed to know the exact pieces of data needed to answer that question. And they had to do this manual ETL transformation where they might have Python scripts connecting to the APIs and loading out those specific pieces of data and putting them into cubes, and then going into one of these slow transactional databases. And the problem with this was typically the transactional databases were on-prem databases. You only had a set amount of storage, so you had to be really, really careful with how much data you bring over and not bringing over unnecessary data that's just going to take up space. And then at the end, it's going to slow down the query times if you have unnecessary data there. And the problem with this was this whole process could take anything from 2 weeks to a few months to do the manual ETL and finally get that answer to a C-level executive. The problem at the end of this is people always have a variable question. So the CTO finally gets the answer to the question he was looking for, and then he says, okay, but what if this? Or what if we take into consideration this other variable? And that data engineer hasn't brought over those pieces of data, and he needs to go back and reorchestrate the pipeline again. And often the answers were no longer relevant by the time the data engineer will get back. So what happened in 2012? This is where the modern data stack started to come. We were founded in 2013 on the basis of the likes of Looker being founded in 2012, Snowflake in 2012, and other powerful columnar data warehouses like BigQuery or even Redshift. And essentially what we do now is we're an ELT provider where we connect to all of your applications, for example, like Salesforce, your marketing applications, Zendesk, all of these. We connect to your databases, and we do full schema replications where we make your data warehouse a data lake. So you have absolutely every piece of data available from your sources in this powerful columnar data warehouse. BigQuery don't charge for data, so why not load absolutely everything in and have the end users enabled to answer their own questions whenever they want to. We do a normalization of the data before we load it in. We don't do a heavy transformation, but we connect to the APIs and bring it over in these schemas and tables. So it's ready to be queried on by the likes of Looker or your BI tool then on top of the warehouse. So what we do essentially is we connect to an API through just using a username and password for most of them, use OAuth to get in, and we turn this denormalized data into a full schema. So you can see the different tables that we bring over, what they're mapped to, what the primary keys are in each table. So it's readily available to be queried in Looker. And Looker have what's called Fivetran blocks, essentially. So they know exactly what the data is like when it's coming through Fivetran into your database or your data warehouse. We also allow for automatic schema migrations. So when an API was changing, or if a new object or a brand new table was added to a schema, that would have historically broke the integration. And the data engineer would need to go back and reorchestrate that pipeline because of this new object that was added. We allow for automatic schema migrations by default. So it's up to you if you want to include it or not, but it's not going to break the pipeline. So essentially there's no need for data engineer to manage the pipeline at all, or the database. It's all a managed solution, and it just empowers the analyst. So this is what we're at now in the modern data stack, where the whole process is managed by the analyst. For Fivetran to connect all your sources and load into BigQuery, you just need a username and password. There's no scripts, no coding. And we just do incremental batch updates every 1 minute or 5 minutes, as often as you want, from your source into the pipeline. And the connectors are managed by us. So they're built and maintained by our developers. If there's an API change, we will be on top of that. We will fix the connector. So there's no need for anyone to go in and reorchestrate it. So some of the results that they found. So Russell, after implementing us in August, he saved, this is just on the infrastructure cost. So he saved $375,000 euro on the work of 3 people across 2 years. So straight away, he didn't need the data engineer to be managing the pipeline. He could let them go off and do more meaningful work that they probably prefer to do and they're more skilled to do. It also, in the modern data stack, you don't need a DBA. So for the likes of Snowflake and BigQuery, you remove the need to have a database administrator. because it's just so simple to use. And then Pedro, he gives that their unicorn status is all because of being a data-driven culture. Anytime investors got onto them to ask any questions about income, growth rates, churn rates, success metrics, they have absolutely everything available that makes it so easy for investors to see the return that they're going to get from this company. And he credits that all back to being a data-driven culture, and he's going to continue to add more metrics across the board. So what is kind of considered to be in our competitor landscape? Towards the left, you have the classical ETL solutions, which still maintain a lot of coding, some Python scripts, for example, with Luma, where you do mapping of table to table in the warehouse. You have some of the more legacy tools like Informatica and Talent. On the right-hand side, you would have all the ELT solutions. You'd have Stitch, which is mainly aimed at startups. It's an open source tool where the connections were built by anybody who wanted to use it themselves, but it's not necessarily the data you need to bring over. Then in the enterprise side of things, you would have like Fivetran, data virtuality, and segments.
Airflow is missing.
Yeah, I didn't make this slide. I know Airflow is, it's probably more on the ETL side of things, to be fair. But yeah, unfortunately, I didn't make them. I am aware that they are in there. I'm sure there's other ones. I know there's constantly more ETL and ELT tools popping up. As you know, I'm a Fivetran. I'm happy to go into us in more detail at a later stage. If you are interested, you can email me at fivetran.com. You can come up and chat to me after this. And we do offer 14-day free trials if you just go to fivetran.com/signup. So thank you.
We're going to do questions between sessions, so if there are any questions for Fivetran, fire them out now.
Maybe I have a question. What's your engine?
Sorry?
What's your engine?
Our infrastructure underneath?
Yes, what do you use? Scala? I don't know. Loom.
So I could probably do it next to Evie in here. I could show our infrastructure slides on our docs page, but basically most of our connectors for the APIs, they're not JDBC ones, they're API connections, mainly written in Java, from my understanding. Our infrastructure, we're multi-cloud, so on the back end, you can decide to be on AWS or on Google, on GCP. But I'm not too familiar exactly what the technology is that builds the connections. I know they are built and maintained by us, but yeah, that's something I can follow up with one of our sales engineers and get back to you.
We're the sales reps, you gotta be nice to us.
Any other questions?
Cool, Peter.
Okay, thanks very much, guys.
Thank you, Peter. 1 second. So yeah, before I dive in, I just wanted to say a couple words. AppsFlyer signed up as a customer last year in March, I believe, and Alexandra is off, and a lot of the Looker team was sort of pulled in to make this a success. So in a lot of ways, it's a relief almost as the sales rep on the account that finally we were in a place where they're very happy with Looker. It took a lot of work. I want to compliment them for putting in the effort over the last year as well. That's up. So yeah, it's awesome to be here with one of the best logos at Telecases. What I'm talking about today is something a little different. Something that we call Vanity Metrics, but the presentation more is around how to get beyond focusing on vanity metrics and focusing on metrics that are actually going to be impactful to the organization. We call them operational metrics. Really, we want Looker to be able to drive people to do their work better on a day-to-day basis, right? So I'll explain it all. I just said that. I'd say probably 90–95% of calls when we're talking to new prospects as a Looker sales rep begin with a conversation around, I'm looking for a dashboarding tool. And this is great in some ways, because we can do dashboards. But in a lot of ways, what the Looker philosophy is around is trying to deliver a solution that allows people to answer their own questions. And more than anything, we want to percolate the data so that people know how to make, they don't even have to make a decision. They know when to take action, right? So dashboards are really good, as I would say. It's usually the first sort of inkling that there's an impulse to be data-driven. There's a desire to be data-driven within an organization. They do increase engagement sort of the company at large with data. and that's really important. And they tend to focus people on the KPIs, largely around the KPIs that the C-suite decides are important. And again, none of this is bad. It's better than just ignoring the data that you got in your database. But there are a couple places where they fall down. Fundamentally, if you're an admin of a dashboard, you try to engage as many people as possible with that dashboard, and that means that you're including reports for, what, 15 different teams potentially. You can water down the message of that dashboard where it says something to everyone, but not anything too meaningful to anyone. They tend to be somewhat static as well. A good example of this is, imagine if you're in the retail industry, you know, those KPIs in December, which is largely get as much product out the door as possible, are going to be fundamentally different than the KPIs that are important in January, which is like, let's prevent that product from going back in the door. So doing that on a dashboard could be a little complex. And then finally, they tend to be a little bit vain by focusing on vanity metrics, which I'm about to define and describe to you. But also, like, I'm sure if anyone here admins a dashboard, you know you fall into that trap of, you know, get the data to the right people in a format that they can understand. But then somewhere along the way, you turn into a graphic designer, and you're talking about how much white space is on the page, what font should this be, what color should we have. All of this is largely a waste of time. Like, let's get people the data they need to do the job better. This is our job. So yeah, stepping back a minute, let's talk about what vanity metrics actually are. I think like the simplest example that most of us can relate to is getting a grade at some point. Got an A last term, got an A on that exam, and what does it mean, and who's it important to? If you're the teacher or the professor of the class, it's an important thing. You get to make recommendations for the next semester based on whatever people did the previous semester. So it's really important to be able to cohort those students and say, like, who should be in an advanced class, who should be maybe in a remedial class. That A is important to potential employers because they need to know, like, well, how much does this guy work? Like, is he going to be someone that shows up and puts in the effort to actually excel? It's largely important for parents if you have to decide, like, am I going to get a tutor? Do I need to worry about this guy, or are they doing fine? But to the student themselves, this tells me almost nothing. It tells me I did well last semester, but like, how do I use this information to know that I'll get an A next semester? Like, what did I do? And how do I potentially get an A+? How do I avoid slipping back? It tells me almost nothing. So that's sort of the key difference. This is a vanity metric that's important to compare across cohorts, but it's not important to me as the individual doing the work. So stepping back, going to the definition itself. A vanity metric for business is largely something like total revenue, daily active users, CAC. They really help to compare companies, but they don't help at all. Well, they don't help very much to run companies. I'm talking about you're a CSM. How do you know when to take action based on a vanity metric? It just won't mean much. How many people in the organization actually impact daily revenue or total revenue on a daily basis? CEOs, CFOs. I'm a sales rep trying to close business anyway. I got my quota. I'm not going to pay attention to total revenue. So getting on beyond that onto metrics that matter, operational metrics. Largely, these have to do with direct experience between your users or your customers and your company. So like for the looker, the one we obsess over is customer health score. And I'll get into a little more detail on what that means. But we just know if customer health score is dipping low, our CSM team knows exactly what needs to happen in order to get that up, right? It should be sliced and diced by many angles. So we're comparing customer health score per whatever cohort, per region, per geography, it doesn't matter. And then it should inspire action. We should know what to do when we get an operational metric that's in a problematic zone. So a couple like simple examples of this. Been told by our marketing team, we can't name these looker customers, but Uber is the first one. They would obviously focus on monthly active users. This is really important for Uber to compare their market share against Lyft, against Get, whoever else they're competing against. But as like a person working in the Uber app or a driver of Uber, they've determined that a much more meaningful metric to indicate customer loyalty is minutes to pick up. Like, if that's low enough, people will come back to you. That's all that the users care about. Deliveroo is the second one. Again, really easy to focus on how many hamburgers we sold last month. But the better indicator of people being loyal to Deliveroo, because let's be honest, we've got a million decisions on how to get food into our houses. Much better indicator of loyalty is going to be percent made deliveries. And then the third one, Snapchat. I think pretty much every media company looks at daily active users. And it's important to compare against media companies, but like as minutes in app of Instagram started increasing beyond Snapchat, it was clear that Instagram was doing something right and Snapchat had to change the game a little bit. So this is sort of what we're talking about when we're looking at operational metrics versus vanity metrics. So I guess to define good operational metrics, I think an important first step is to sort of step away from your database, step away from data inputs, step away from all of that, and sit in almost a vacuum and say, like, what is it we want to know? Largely, this is going to be customer happiness, customer loyalty, satisfaction, this sort of. After that, look at your data set and start saying, like, all right, what of these potential indicators are we measuring right now? What do we need to measure? Is another important question. And then start finding the correlations, right? And then another important thing to bear in mind is that it's not going to be perfect. It will never be perfect. An operational metric is something that evolves over time. Every time we release a new feature, our customer health score definition has to update, right? Anytime we have a new application, like we switch from Zendesk to whatever else ticketing system, we're going to have to change that definition. And that's fine. You got to iterate these metrics over time because your business is ultimately evolving. If it's static, then it's not going to do very well. So, couple case studies. These are two Looker customers that came very close to falling into the trap of focusing on vanity metrics to disastrous results. But I'm just going to show you how they took an operational approach and it found some success. So the first one is 2 Dots. Has anyone played 2 Dots? Mobile game. Seems like it's for children. I've played it. The point of the game is to connect dots and then you progress through the levels. Mobile games are interesting because unlike platform games, they don't make money when you download and install. They make money by keeping people in the game, right? As players progress through levels, like the sort of economics of our psychology work out that, okay, I'm on level 10, I've invested so much time, now it's worth $2 to continue on. So there's always this like redesign, rebalancing, trying to keep users engaged. And there's an important, this story actually cracks me up because there's an important balance between challenging and keeping engagement versus making it too difficult and people rage quit. And we're going to see a couple examples of that. See, not Sergey. So standard across the industry is to look at revenue per month and new installs per month. These are basically what people look at. And you can see excellent metrics for comparing various mobile game companies. But for the game itself and for 2 Dots, they decided that what was more important for them to maximize revenue was to look at completion rate of levels. And as they started doing that analysis, they saw that there were clearly 3 levels that were problematic in 2 Dots. Completion rate was dropped. So they did, let's give you a quick demo. You connect the dots in the same color and they disappear. But this is essentially a redesign of the UI because they saw that there were 3 problematic levels and it's not showing up too well. The light green lines here, you can see that it went from before completion rate was way down here, and they were able to boost them up. And again, this is the operational metrics that's going to impact the bottom line in a much bigger way than just looking at new installs and revenue per month. Second case study is Venmo. It's a payments application. I'm sure everyone's heard of Venmo. This is actually a really interesting one. iOS made a new update, and Venmo decided, let's update our UI, make it a little more modern. So they did a couple simple things. They, made it a little more white. They put payments up here. They also noticed previously that almost all users were using it to pay, not request. So they made pay the default option. And right after the release of the new version, they saw a number of payments just went through the roof, and everyone was celebrating. The product team out at the pub, having a great time. And only until weeks later did they notice that there were sort of anecdotal reports from the support team that people were having trouble with payments. This is just an example of poor Steve, the user, having an absolute meltdown as he's walking through Times Square. He tried to request money for an air conditioning bill, but he ended up paying his friend 3 times, and then I assumed something went wrong there. What the product team decided to analyze was something called number of mistakes. And it was actually a pretty simple query to write. It was like, if the exact payment was returned within 24 hours, let's assume that was a mistake payment. And they built that analysis into their model and saw that, oh, look, iOS users are making way more mistakes than they should be. Both the web application and the Android version were doing pretty well, staying relatively level. But as soon as they released that new version, it went through the roof for iOS. So they went straight back to the drawing board. Move payments buttons back down here, and they removed that default into pay. So you had to opt into whether you were paying or requesting. And you can see this now comparing by a different, slicing and dicing by a different metric. Now on app versions on iOS, but stay on 6.0 or 6.1, people were still having a ton of trouble, but getting down to 6.2, it was leveling off back to where it was before. Clearly some work to do still, but at least they've identified a problem. This could have been like a disaster. They would have lost tons of users if they just focused on number of payments as the metric they were measuring. But clearly they were able to uncover a problem and fix it. So yeah, how do you get there as an organization? So number one, yeah, is to like focus on getting a data stack that is actually appropriate for like holistic measurement of any and all KPIs that you could imagine. So centralize it, put it in a data warehouse that you can analyze from. As Peter mentioned, like it's no longer necessary to transform your data to the point that it's ready to be analyzed as soon as it's in the database. We can get somewhat dirty data in there and put any of the tools that can sort of model data on top of it and let that model do the work of transformation, cleansing, etc. And then yeah, if you happen to use Looker, then there's some resources for you, obviously, but we're not pitching Looker here. And then culturally, I think it's important, and I like to think it's something that AppsFlyer has done, but it's important to have your analyst team sort of act as educators, right? You want to enable people to ask their own questions. You don't really want to be the instrument of answering questions. So be patient with your business users. They're going to come to you. They're going to ask repetitive questions, but like show them how to self-serve. I think it's an important part. And then another thing is, you know, take a question and then sort of get beyond it. Say, okay, you've got a problem with A. Here's B, C, and D that you can do if you're thoughtful about it and teach yourself how to use these tools. So in summary, yeah, stop focusing on like the KPIs that people tell you to focus on. Let's focus on things that are going to be meaningful and just sort of help you do your job better. I'd say embrace something that will allow you to iterate on KPI definitions. Looker does this. There's probably hundreds of tools that will allow you to have a data model where you can update definitions and get that data centralized. And then another thing is like don't shy away from dashboards. Like dashboards really are a good way to start people being interested in what you're doing. Get them out there, get the data everywhere you possibly can in the organization, and then embrace people coming to you and asking questions about how to use it better. That's my conversation. Thank you. Are there any questions for Q-Ron? That's all right. Cool. So up next is going to be Alexandra. She's been sort of the lead champion of Looker at AppsFlyer. Mountain of work over the last year. Thank you very much. So yeah, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you, Fernando. My name is Alexandra. I am a BI expert at AppsFlyer. And today I'm going to talk about data and how to get better insights from your data, or at least how we do that, and how Looker helped us to achieve that in the last year. So I'm going to start from a little overview about AppsFlyer, who we are, what we do, about our data group, how do we process data, and then we're going to dive a little bit to the BI team and our journey with Looker. AppsFlyer, we are a mobile attribution and marketing analytics platform. We allow app marketers to see the full picture of the mobile attribution world. Our SDK allows app installation and event tracking information for those marketers so they can measure everything from clicks to impressions, in-app events, installs, everything, and eventually get all the KPIs about marketing performance. In order to do that, our data group doing a really hard work and analyzing a lot of data, and I'm not going to dive into the technical part today because this is not in the this Meetup content, but I just want to say that technically, after capturing all those events, all those installs and in-app events with web handlers, we're putting them into Kafka queue and dividing them by topics. And eventually, we have this data source in BigQuery, and we store there all our raw data, which eventually will give our customers the ability to drill down to the data and see every event and every install where it's coming from. Another layer of data that we have in parallel, so all those events that are coming from Kafka topics, after certain processing of our data team, we store them in S3, in a Parquet format, and eventually they are coming to Druid that holds all the historical aggregated data, and to ClickHouse that holds 48 last hour of data, and it brings the metrics in our dashboard for our customers. So that's great. After all this magic, we have a great product. We are giving a lot of insights for app marketers. Let's talk about a minute about big data. I'm sure you're all familiar with this term big data, but how much it is? How much is it big data? Any guess how many events we're processing per day? Can someone guess?
2 million. 50 billion.
So we're processing 60 billion events per day. Woo! We have our own data factory, or should I say data plumbing hub, that's working really hard. And in Amazon S3, it's about 60 terabytes of data per day. Our total BigQuery size for now it's 25 petabytes of data. I'm not sure if you can even imagine how much data it is. And it keeps growing very fast. So, yes. So, again, that's great. We're processing a lot of data. We're giving great insights for our customers. But what about us as a company? What about us as a business? How do we get better insights from our data? How do we as a BI team support our internal departments and support their better decision-making on their daily work? So we're left with all this raw data in a BigQuery, and this is really a lot of data. And we have Parquet file that is stored in S3. On top of them, we are using Athena in order to be able to analyze them. Athena gives us the ability to create tables on top of Parquet files, and we can analyze them. And besides that, we have a lot of internal information, which is of course much smaller, and it's stored in Amazon RDS. And it's data from Salesforce, Jira, Zendesk, and a lot of internal information, billing, and much more. And I think the most important question for us as a BI team is how do we create information from this data? Because raw data is really unuseful unless it gives you insights. And in order to bring insights, you have to have information, and I think it's the most important thing for every company is the information. So after evaluating several BI tools, we've decided to move on with Looker for a few reasons. First of all, Looker gave us the ability to analyze our data real time. And real time, I mean, with just a simple connection definition, we've been able to analyze immediately data from BigQuery, from RDS, from Athena, and it was just available for us very quickly. Second, Looker has this LookML, which is a modeling language that is SQL-based, and it allowed us to create business logic on top of all this data for better insights. Another reason was the performance, and in terms of performance, I'm talking about, since it's a real-time connection, we have this advantage of those great engines of BigQuery and Athena, because Looker just sends the query, and BigQuery and Athena analyze them real time. And of course, even for BigQuery and Athena, 60 billion, it's hard. Come on. We can't talk about seconds for 60 billion. So we've managed to make it work by dividing the data into two sections. We left raw data for product analytics and for support for departments that are really using writing complex queries and custom queries, and they really need to dive into the raw data. So we're of course paying with a poor performance, but they have the ability to write analytics on top of this data. For our business departments and for C-level managers and for board, of course, they don't want to wait a lot for the dashboard to load. So we aggregated the data to even higher level, and of course, much smaller, and it gave us the ability to really analyze above billion rows in seconds in Looker. And another advantage that we have in Looker, in terms of permissions, and I'm not talking about data restriction permissions, I'm talking about different types of users. For example, if there is a user that just want to log in and see the data, so we have the ability to give him a viewer permission. And if you are someone that is more advanced user who want to create dashboards and build reports, you have the Explorer ability with all the connection to all the tables. And if you are an analyst that has SQL skills and want to write LookML and want to write business logic, you can also do it. And of course, all the administration section, managing the connection, performance, bringing a lot additional information and data sources to Looker. And I also want to talk a little bit about engagement. That's great. We have now this awesome BI tool, but how do we engage 500 people to use it? How do we spread the word in company that, guys, you now have all the information in Looker and you can use it? So first of all, Looker has this great documentation and online training, which is available online, and it was a great start point for us to learn Looker, to learn all the abilities of this tool, and we use it. And currently, we've created our custom Looker training, and now it's part of our onboarding process for new employees. So this is a great way to implement the tool. Looker has also online chat, and this is very convenient because if you are analyzing something or building a dashboard and you have some question or something doesn't work, you don't have to wait for anyone. We can just start to write the question in chat, and they work during all the working days and all the working hours, so it's also very convenient. We have about 20 analysts now in the company, so almost all department has his own analyst that is, of course, knows SQL, and he's familiar well with the business use cases of this specific department, and he can just build the business logic and create dashboards and reports for this department. So it's also very convenient for us as a BI team to support them and give them access to data. And constantly, we're monitoring ourselves in terms of number of users, number of dashboards, how our system is performing. So we saw that there is a really great adoption rate in Looker during the last year. And we just recently renewed our contract with Looker, and we've doubled the number of explorers. It means that users not only want to view the data, but they also want to be able to create dashboards themselves. So it was really a great rate for us to see that we're on the right track. And I also wanted to mention that in the last version, Looker released, this is very great performance monitoring tool. This is out of the box. They have user activity monitoring, they have content activity monitoring, and also performance audit of the system. So we as a BI team can always see, and this is out of the box, and this is completely customized. You can see everything you have in the system, number of users, number of queries, the performance running, each source, each table, everything is measurable. So eventually it was a great adoption and usage rate. Also, I want to talk about a few challenges that we had during the implementation process of Looker. Not everything is pink. So one of the challenges, one of the limitations that we saw, Looker doesn't have the ability to join between different data sources natively. So as you remember, we have at least 3 data sources. Every one of them is with different data aggregation level. But the most important one, we want to give our departments the ability to see the full picture, to see the customer information with the traffic information that we are capturing for those dashboards and for those marketeers. So in order to do that, we've managed to find like a workaround for this. We're running Spark Jobs ETL behind the scenes, and basically taking data from one side, joining it from another side, and bringing it back to Looker like one big row table with all the dimensions. And another thing that I want to mention is custom visualization. So we've had this, one of the requirements was to build a dashboard for managers in Looker, and they wanted it to be with a very specific look and feel, with a pivot table and a specific colors, and Looker doesn't have this visualization in out of the box. So we consulted with Looker, and they advised us to work with Vision BI, and the Vision BI in 3 days gave us custom viz completely as we wanted it, and now it's implemented as part of our Looker visualization library, and it was just in 3 days, very quick deployment processing. So what I wanted eventually to say, even though you will see limitations in every tool you will work with, but since Looker is very code-based and very flexible tool, it really allows you to customize it for your own business needs. So that's it for me. Thank you.
You just need your password, Alexandra. Last thing. So hi, I'm Ilan from Vision BI. We helped them to do this Looker viz in 3 days. She didn't count the nights, so it's 3 days and nights.
I didn't count your nights.
But what I would like to talk a bit is about the Looker viz and how cool it is. So first, Ilan from Vision BI. Vision BI is a consultant company in the BI field. We worked for the last 12 years in the BI market, a lot with big data companies. And let's go. So first, what is Looker custom viz? It's when your front tool became your server side. That means that you're using Looker to interact with the data. You use Looker to manage all your permissions, all your connectivity to the database. You just get the data set from your sources, and then you can just grow it as ever you want. That means that you can take external libraries like D3 or any other library, JavaScript library that you find on the web, and you can just integrate it into the product. And the cool thing is that you can integrate it as one of your components, and all the other can be just native Looker. So it became a dashboard that combining data from custom widget that you develop and other widgets that are built in Looker, and that makes this product very customizable, flexible, and allows you to develop really cool things really fast. There is, I encourage you to go to the GitHub, just look for in Google for Looker custom base, you will find a GitHub repository with those examples. You can just take one of them and start to play with it. It's really easy, and you can do really cool stuff in 3 days and nights. So how it works. Basically, Lookers, someone asked here, what happens when you're running a query on Looker? So the first thing is to connect to the database to extract the data, and then the data returns into JavaScript objects. So we can just use the standard Looker visualization that exists in the product, but you can also take those responses and to play with them and just to draw them however you want to. Just load those JavaScript into your environment, into your local server, and you present it. So in the first step, you're getting this response, the data. Of course, it's important. This is how you want to play and to draw it. Elements, that mean some other configuration is the UI that you're getting, some inputs that you're getting from the users. Details and a lot of objects that inside of them you can find, for example, in the query response. One moment. So in the query response, you can find the field, for example, and go on all table calculations. Table calculations are the calculated numbers that you created in Looker. So you don't need to create them again when you're drawing the graph or the table. You just can use it. So all the metadata is available, all the data is available, and just now you just need your JavaScript or HTML skills to draw it and use your imagination. So in our case, the use case in AppsFlyer, they wanted 3 main issues. And of course, it begins with 3, and then we discover how many really there are. But first of all was the fixed column. There was a requirement to fix the left column or the number of X columns to the left, and when you scroll to the right, you will still see the left column. There is a requirement to just pivot the table, because when there is a pivot in Looker, but when you pivot the table, sometimes field calculation are changing their calculation. So they just wanted to calculate it basically the same, and then to draw it differently. And the cool thing is that in the JavaScript, you just write your options that you want to get from the users, and on each lookML, you just use it and enter your insert. So it's not the JavaScript for each component that you're developing, is more like for each element that you're using in your dashboard. So you can use it in different ways. One I just want to fix the column, in a different widget I want to pivot the data. You can just develop your own customizations. So in this case, it was really, this is the input, this is the output. At the end, we wanted to take the months that the name of the measures that was on the columns, to put it on rows, to put it on bold, to sort the data on the opposite way, because there is no way to sort the data in the columns. They wanted the last month to be on the left side, and of course to fix the column width, and they wanted it to be different on the left column than the data columns. And all those changes was just very easy to do in JavaScript. At the end, one of the things is that you're delivering the product to the customer, and they say, hey, what about the drill and the tooltip that they just had in Looker, where it is now? Because this is an HTML that you developed from scratch. So this was the third night. Just taking from the input, again, from the metadata of the response, take the tooltip, take the drill components, and just to pass them to the same API. And at the end, this is what was the outcome. And of course, it's a very important report. It's the ARR of the company. So it is going to play to do a lot of bugs in these numbers.
Someone that knows through JavaScript and through the law?
Yeah, for sure. I told myself that I'm an expert in Looker, so I don't come to tell you that I didn't know too much before I started to work on it. But I didn't really, it's the first Looker visit, it's really very easy to develop. This is the outcome. This is, by the way, how we work during those 3 days. just recorded the screen, sent to Alexandra, so tell me, okay, this is fine, but this is not. So the first step is how you want. First, you draw your table. Okay, this is your data table and the data that you're going to play with once you're getting the response. So this is the standard view in Looker. You say, okay, I want this dimension, those members, those measures, and on the right there are some more calculated measures. And this is the data set that you will get in your response. Now you just change the data based on those, based on those freezing, is the name of the plugin. Just put your inside inputs here. What is the column width? What is the first column width? How many columns you want to fix? All those are customizable, and it's in the same JSON that I showed in the previous page. And you can see that when you play with it, it changed the visualization. And basically, you can really create whatever you want. And in this case, we play with the size here to all the columns to be more stressed to the left. This is the tooltip that we had to inherit from the native environment. And this is the loading data. Let's hope that it will work. It's a video. And this is the tree. Okay, so all the native environment can be just inherited into your plugin, and that's it. I actually don't have a thank you slide. Any questions?
Yes.
Yes.
The tooltip and the readout is
Yes.
so this is native to Looker, understand? And so when you develop the visualization, you don't need to build it really.
You don't need to build it. You just need to open Looker in a standard visualization and to see in the HTML what is generated, and basically to generate the same. And then the same environment is, the same functionality is inherited. So without calling a function, for example, you can just put it in your HTML and it will work. More questions? Thank you very much.
We're going to go straight through to the next session. It's a short one, and she's fantastic. And then Morgan and 2 last slices of pizza.
Hi everyone, so good evening. My name is Etl and I'm a product data analyst in the product team. And today, in the next few minutes, we're going to talk about what is our team doing and how we use Looker in our day-to-day life. So the team provides basically an analyst solution for a variety of teams, both internally, like business units, and also for our clients. So I have a lot of clients around the world, and we provide them analysis services along the mobile attribution actions. So in order to do so, we are relying on a huge amount of data that comes from multiple data sources. We analyze the behavior of the user in the client app. For example, which users install the app, which users uninstall the app, what they did inside the app. Did they purchase something? Did they do login or so on? And we also track the behavior of the users of our clients inside HQ dashboard. Which dashboard our users is looking at, what they are doing inside the dashboard, which API, pull, push, or so on they are using. And all this data sums up to about 60 terabytes a day. So it's a lot of data to analyze, and we have a lot of challenges regarding this amount. And we were looking for a BI solution that will enable us to leverage AppsFlyer data and to take it into more insightful information that we can present to our internal users. And here is Looker enters the picture. And we create, using Looker, a variety of dashboards that serves a lot of use cases for different users. We serve the product manager using dashboards that track feature release. We serve business departments like customer success manager and partner development teams. We provide dashboard that measure our product, which dashboard, which solution our users are using and how they use that, and how the changes that we are doing reflects on our users. And we also use Looker as an environment for R&D testing. We can mimic the production environment and then do QA and testing before releasing a new feature. So it's a really cool thing. And actually, in the last year, the Looker dashboard became an essential thing to our internal users. We have a lot of requests. We recruit more and more analytics in order to create more dashboards for our internal users. So in order to do a dashboard in Looker, we first have a business definition that is derived from a conversation that we are doing with the relevant department. And after we have all the definition for the dashboard, we are accessing our raw data that is being stored both in BigQuery and S3 on Parquet files. And then we create an ETL process using Python and aggregate all the data, calculate all the relevant KPIs, and create all the insights that later on are in our Looker dashboards. And in our Looker dashboard, we also use advanced capabilities that Looker provides us. For example, we are using Looker variables that enable us to create measures and dimensions that dynamically can be changed in the dashboard itself on the fly. HTML capabilities like Ilan showed us before that enable us to enrich the visualization of our dashboards. Write tables that can enable us to query, to do sub-queries and run them on real time. And permission, this is really, really important. We have a lot of users, different roles, and each user needs to see different things on the dashboard based on his or her role. So we are using a lot of permissions on our dashboards in order to show the really and centralize all the data according to the role of the user. And we have more than 400 users and a lot of dashboards. I will just give you 2 examples of dashboards that we have created. So the first dashboard is the account overview dashboard, and it's a B2C dashboard that serves our customer success managers. We have 15 branches around the world, a lot of accounts, a lot of CSM that handle a lot of accounts. And until we have this dashboard, each CSM in each country created his or her own or her file, like Excel file, centralize all the data, which feature are being used, how they are being used. And it took a lot of time, and it wasn't so accurate all the time. And we just combined all the data from multiple data sources. And here you can see a quick overview of all the features that are being used for each account and how they are being used, the ranking of the account, the health of the account. So all of our CSMs are using this dashboard. It's a really, really cool feature that saves a lot of time and help them to be proactive rather than to wait to the client, approach them and say, we want this feature, we are not using this feature, and so on. Another dashboard that we created is the usage dashboard. This is a B2B dashboard. And in this dashboard, we are tracking the usage of AppsFlyer solutions. The dashboard, the pull API, the push API, the export, and so on. And by looking at this dashboard, we can see how many active users we have, what is the stickiness of those users, which element they are using, how they are using it, and basically be more proactive and really understand our product and improve it accordingly. And saying all that, there are still some challenges that we are facing when we are dealing with Looker. Most of them will be resolved during the 2019 according to Looker roadmap. So the first thing is that we would like to have more advanced alerting capabilities because we don't have the capability for now to alert the user when a specific threshold, for example, is being passed or a specific element is behave in a different way or there is an anomaly. in the dashboard. Also, we would like to have ability to close the loop. For example, if a user is looking at the dashboard and see something, you want to then give feedback back, and that it will be saved back in the database. For example, if we alert on account that is in a risk for churn, for our opinion, according to the KPIs, maybe the CSM knows that is in a risk for churn, it's in progress, and you want to deliver it back to the database. So we won't have this alert in the next day. So this is just one example for that. We would like to have some more advanced visualization capabilities and more interactive dashboards in order to improve our user experience and to have more abilities to filter and interact with the dashboard in order to tell the story like we like to tell it. But we looked at the roadmap on 2019. A lot of our requests are there, so it's cool. And that's it. Any questions? So the ETL process that serves the internal dashboard is being done by our team using a Python framework that we created, and we maintain it. It's not a production ETL, but we have a certification on that, and we are all the analytics team here can use this product in order to create the aggregate table that serves the Looker dashboard.
And another question regarding your data models. You created different data model for every use case, so you have one more aggregated that is used to.
So we don't have data warehouse that serves those dashboards. Our data is being stored like in raw data, and we create a ETL process for each business question that we want to present on the dashboard. We don't have like facts and dimensions yet. It's a big challenge with such a big data. So we create something dedicated for each dashboard or dashboards.
Like one table that answers the question that you need to answer.
Yeah, so we need a really good design before we are starting our dashboard. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks for all of our excellent